there's a new book in Waterdeep here, as we have Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, a physical book we all own. And Tasha's seems to be a new supplemental guide that's all rules, and we're all super horny for it. Jenel, what is your initial impression of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything?
I think it kind of like flips the whole game on its head.
Mm-hmm.
Like it makes it so much easier to really create unique characters, unique campaigns. It just expands everything. It gives you, it feels like it doubled the amount of options you have as a DM and as a player.
Yeah, I think so as well. Michael, you've had the book for 20 minutes. What do you think about it?
I've barely glanced at it, but it's got some pretty pictures in it.
Yeah, it sure does.
I'm very excited to hear you guys talk about what you thought was cool in it.
Mm-hmm.
I also started reading from the back of it, so I realized there's a lot of tables in this thing.
Yeah, you're taking the Time Wizard thing very seriously.
Yes, yeah, of course.
I really having a love affair with tables because in the campaign right now we're going through the Moonshade Isles, which do not have a 5th edition book, so I'm having to design a lot of stuff from scratch. And so I've seen how much is actually in the Dungeon Master's Guide that I just glazed over before, like how to procedurally generate a dungeon through rolls and like the kind of environmental hazards and stuff that exists through there. And environmental stuff, especially like being able to roll and see like what kind of creatures you will encounter. And I think that they have all been interesting, but kind of shallow mechanically. And I think like the stuff in this book really gets into tying those mechanics into narrative in a really cool way.
Well, there's some cool ideas for just settings in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are, and I don't know. It's just like setting up that that these places exist, sort of, and like the kinds of things that you could encounter there. But it's a lot of good ideas for DMs, like the idea of having like an area that's ravaged by magical energy, or haunted, or infested. Or my favorite one is mirror magic. Is actually very briefly described in here, and that's like a very close to my heart because the first ever dungeon that I ever ran as a DM was my own homebrew mirror magic. So it's cool to see that they're thinking about it.
It's interesting. It's very interesting. I have not actually gotten to look at some, like I focused a little bit more on the character stuff, but
tell me about it.
Well, let's get into that first, because that's the first part of the book is the new character options. It seems as though Wizards is attempting to correct some of their harder restrictions on character creation. They are allowing you to swap around your latent racial ability bonuses and proficiencies to to sort of allow you to have a more original character. It's sort of like how they were very strict about tieflings being red. And that was a thing the fans immediately discarded.
Right.
And now it's almost like cool and meta to have a red tiefling, But Jenel, what sort of expansions to the character stuff are you enjoying the most here?
So it's really cool that they're letting you essentially, build the character you want with your like number wise stats. Like that is really cool how essentially if you pick a character that is, their race would generally be like a +2 to charisma, but you don't want them to be as charismatic and you want them to have a different upbringing than that traditional race might have in their society, that you can take that stat and move it to something that is more applicable for your background.
Yes.
But also, like, even like setting like rules aside a little bit, the fact that there's a whole section on custom lineage, you're not forced into picking a specific race. Like they essentially made the half elf or half orc idea where you can do that with any race in the custom lineage. Like you can build whatever you want to be. You have like a history to your character that is more realistic to, the world today of like everybody having different ancestors and things from different parts of the world.
I haven't dug into this too deep, but I've had to like homebrew half drow and things like that before. Does it sort of give you a guide on how to do that?
Yes.
Like picking out, that's really cool.
So it essentially gives you like a blank canvas of you need to fill in this and these are the different options you would have in this category. And it like helps you essentially build your own race out of like backgrounds. It's not like it's not huge, but it gives you the bones to do it basically and the permission to do it.
Well, that is great. And I assume it's not the sort of thing where you can like have every dwarf trait and every lizard folk trait.
No. It's like you pick and choose. And it also specifically like tells you to work with your DM and stuff to like pick these things. But it's just interesting that you have that original option now. That you just didn't have before.
It's great for me because I'm the kind of person who I would always choose variant human because I could get the feat. Because like there's a lot of cool feats and like there's even more cool feats now.
And we're gonna talk about that.
But it's cool that now if I want, I can be an elf who has that feat. Like I could be variant elf or variant orc or whatever and still build the kind of character that I want to build it. I just have more options for fantasy flavor. I like that.
Yeah, it's interesting also that humans have always been for some reason almost like the most appealing class from the point of view of the book, which is ridiculous because nobody really wants that. And I'm not sure what the thinking is there, but we gotta sell these humans, make humans more appealing. Got drowning in humans, but humans have +1 in everything and a free feat, which is crazy. Whereas like orcs or half orcs, you couldn't even do orcs originally, had like -2 intelligence or whatever, which is some bullshit. And removing that, I think, is interesting. What do you think that this is an effort by Wizards to take a step back out of the problematic and recent development of fantasy, where like we developed fantasy like a little while ago, and so it's sort of like this fantasy race is this, I'm Max Landis.
Honestly, from my perspective, I don't know if they've actually commented on this or not, but I feel like almost the idea of looking at it as them fixing like the problematic issues is more of a stance that the people who are against them fixing those issues like see it as. Whereas from my perspective, it's just them giving you options.
There are mechanical advantages to doing it that way, yes. I can see, because it is a better system.
Yeah, it's a much better system.
Yeah.
And I feel like the only people who are like fighting against that are kind of like the ones who are like...
The people who tend to think about... think about things in those terms a little too hard anyways.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it was like intentionally like they were like, oh, we have these problematic things we need to fix. I feel like they came at it as we need to expand this universe because people want more options. And then the people who saw it in the other light were more like, no, there's no problems with this. Why would you fix it?
Yeah. And I feel you. Well, if I can bring up something I think is very cool about the new character options are the number one, the smaller feats, like chef or like artificer initiate, where you can sort of like off the bat sort of like dabble in something. I've had a lot of problems making Misra a gunslinger, and just because like without making it a whole giant subclass thing. But now there's a gunner feat. And that's gonna make
just a straight up feat that you can take. That's awesome,
right?
I love the fact that there is, there's the Eldritch Adept thing, so now everybody can get Eldritch Blast.
Yeah,
maybe a little broken, but it's fine.
They're really giving those away too. We got humans and Eldritch Blast.
Yeah.
There was not enough Eldritch Blast in the game.
There wasn't.
We needed more.
Now everyone gets it. Now it's for everybody.
And also,
you can have Eldritch Blast.
I also really like the psychic stuff that they're really going full bore in.
Tell me everything.
So not only are there a lot of new psychic subclasses, like the Psy Warrior and such, but also like there's feats There's
Ooh.
telepathy and telekinesis.
I saw the telekinesis one.
Which act as you would expect.
Wait. What's telepathy do? Tell me about telepathy.
Well, here, I'll bring up the exact text of it, but telepathy is basically like a detect thoughts thing, where you can style your character to be psychic. You
essentially get to use the message cantrip like as much as you want.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you had the cantrip, you could anyways, but this is a way of like getting that without you wasting your cantrip slot.
Yeah.
And then you can use detect thoughts pretty easily too. I don't know if it costs anything.
Yeah, you get +1 to intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, max 20. You can speak telepathically to any character within 60 feet. Creatures understand if you know the language, blah, blah, blah. And you can cast Detect Thought spell requiring no spell slot or components. And you must finish a long rest before you can do it again in this way.
Yeah.
So yeah,
so
basically.
You get Detect Thoughts once a day. Boost one of your stats and message.
And you get to be psychic, you know?
Yeah. I recently discovered the full power of my Helm of Telepathy in a game that Jenel is DMing, and so the idea that I could just start the game out with that is pretty cool.
It is very cool. And also we have new base class enhancements to balance out classes that were maybe not so great. Like Ranger gets a ton of new stuff, which is great.
Oh, whoa. We're not skipping over all the side stuff. We need to backtrack to the new Warlock patron that is specifically like an alien patron.
Oh, okay. I don't really know. You take it. I don't know about this.
Okay, let me.
What's it called? What's it called?
Let me bring it up. Hold,
is that what the Fathomless is? That sounds like an underwater.
No, Fathomless is underwater.
There's a million Cthulhu's in this.
I mean, good.
Yeah, good. Yeah,
the more Cthulhu's, the better. Yeah,
I agree. Cthulhu's such a versatile.
I'm sorry. It's not Warlock. It's not Warlock. Warlock already has the deep one or whatever, but Sorcerer got Aberrant Mind.
Yes.
And that is essentially like you're part alien.
Yeah, which is very cool. A lot of Sorcerer stuff in this book, which I really like. I really like that.
They got some really cool things. But yeah, this one specifically, like, I think it was a long time coming that they needed to put this in there for Sorcerer. I feel like Sorcerer before didn't get like a lot of. They had like very specific things that were
it was like
cliche almost, like it wasn't.
Speaking of telepathy,
I agree. Cool.
The Aberrant Mind gets telepathy at first level.
Right. Well, and like with sorcerers, I always like taking a step back and looking at the classes. Like I always wanted to roll wizard because I think wizards are cool, but sorcerer kind of seems on paper more like the kind of magic user I would be interested in playing.
Yes.
But now I think with like all these very specific sorcerer magic items this introduces, like I guess we'll get into it later, but like the fact that you can have your own blood in a vial as an arcane focus as a sorcerer is really cool.
Yeah,
really cool.
The other option that they got was the Clockwork Soul, which is
what is that? I keep hearing about that.
So it's like it's not necessarily like what you would think. It's not like you're like mechanical or anything like that. It talks about like a cosmic force of order that is infused in you. And it talks about how you can use that power to like shape reality and shit. Like it's very interesting.
It's very like white magic from Magic the Gathering.
Cool.
Where like you can have evil white magic and it looks like rigid law.
Nice.
You know what I mean? Like it's a certain kind of tyranny, and that's kind of the idea just based on my glancing at it for 2 seconds.
Did anybody play Outer Worlds?
Yeah.
In Outer Worlds, there is a religion called Scientism, and it's very similar to Christianity while being the opposite. And their whole thing is that the universe was created by an equation that they are all trying to figure out and solve.
Reverse engineer.
Yeah, they're trying to reverse. Yes, exactly. They're trying to reverse engineer the equation of the universe. And it's cool that there's an idea like that in D&D.
Yeah, I think
agreed.
that this is definitely like getting into that.
Now, I do want to talk about, so Rangers were very underpowered, it seems like, and they had, and a little problematic as well, that they had, like, I hate this race specifically is one of their, and it's not like I hate bears, it's like I hate elves or whatever. And I can speak bears. Elves because I hate them so much.
Your chosen prey could be. Your chosen quarry could be.
I guess it could be. Point out the bear hunter ranger for me then. You know? But now they've sort of changed that to a more on the fly ability where it's less set and it's more like you
can change it right when you level up.
Well, not only that, it's less of a here. I'll just pull it up because it is kind of complicated. But Rangers needed fixing, huh?
That is the meme. The consensus is that Rangers were pretty underpowered, which is, I mean, like for the class that's like Legolas, right? Like Legolas is supposed to be a Ranger, right?
Yeah,
I think. Just looking at him in the movie, I think they call him that a million times.
They sure do, yeah.
So it's
well, also Aragorn, Ranger, Strider, you know,
yeah, Strider, yeah. So like we got like two of the most OP guys in the Lord of the Rings, and yet the class is like constantly kind of getting shit on as not being the good one. So
they also they fixed Beastmaster Ranger, which I appreciate a lot because it was the only class that was like all about. Oh, I guess you have Warlock Pact of the Chain too, but it was specifically a class of you get an animal companion, and yet it was the one class that had the like least powered animal companion like mechanics.
Yeah.
Which was so dumb. And so now they've essentially fixed it and made it exactly the same as all the other ones where like it's a magically summoned animal companion and it gets like, which is nice.
And so they have, so they've added this new thing called Deft Explorer, which replaces Natural Explorer, which makes you an unsurpassed explorer and survivor both in the wilderness and in dealing with others on your travels, which I think is cool. You gain the Canny benefit, blah blah blah. Canny you get at first level, and it says you get to pick a skill proficiency and double it for any ability check that you make, and you can also write and read 2 additional languages. So it seems like they are beginning to transition Ranger from being very plot specific in their usefulness to being more of a thinking on your feet type.
So it's kind of like branching into rogue a little bit. Then.
A little bit. If you're like more of a charisma rogue, and
there's
a little
natural overlap there, I think. Yeah.
There is, yes.
Yeah.
And you also get roving, which increases your walking speed by 5, and you gain a climbing and swimming speed equal to your movement. Which is also very good.
Great.
Yeah, and at level 10 you get Tireless, which as an action you can get temporary hit points, 1d8 plus your Wisdom modifier, and you can use this action any number of times, blah blah blah. And in addition, whenever you finish a long or short rest, your exhaustion level is decreased by 1. So it seems like they are very like pack mule, hard at work, like useful kind of.
But those mechanics make so much more sense and like give you the feeling of this character knows how to survive in the wilderness. Like that definitely like that what you just read like definitely differentiates them from a rogue.
It does, and there's also like some fighter elements in here as well, because at second level you get a variety of fighting style options, such as like blind fighting, druidic warrior, thrown weapon fighting, and then you can change those with rests as well. And you get ranger spells. I remember that being a big deal, was that Misra was not able to use any magic. And I think still
she had spells she could not use. And
right.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But now you have a very expanded spell list. And the favored foe here is when you hit a creature with an attack roll, you can call on a mystical bond with nature to mark the target as a favored enemy for 1 minute. Or until you lose concentration.
Okay, so it's not like you pick one, it's now like something you use in battle. Oh my gosh.
It's a little bit more hunter's marky, I guess.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Where it's like, you're my favorite enemy right now.
Okay. Cool.
and you get extra damage and all that stuff that you would expect. So I think that's all very cool. Yeah, we won't get into all of them, but I also think that Rogue gets a big bonus as well, and a bonus that it doesn't necessarily need. Steady but aim. I really like. Yeah, steady aim.
Steady aim.
Have you heard about this, Michael?
No, tell me about this.
As you go, Jenel.
As a bonus action, you can essentially steady your shot. Like your next. Is it only for ranged?
No, it's for melee as well.
Okay, so basically you take a second to, focus yourself either as like aiming or like preparing yourself to attack, and that it gives you advantage on the attack?
Yeah, you can give yourself advantage as a bonus action if you take no movement on that turn.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Which means
so
you get
broken.
And it also gives you an advantage because then you get sneak attack damage.
Exactly. At third level, you can just give yourself advantage.
Yeah, but you can't move.
So I can't move that.
I think this gives. There was never really an incentive to hide and stay hidden. But I think this is a good one for that, even if it is a little broken.
It's great for archers.
Like, that's what I was just thinking. For a sniper, this makes a lot of sense, but I think it might have some unintended melee applications too.
Yeah. Well, if you stay up front fighting someone and not moving around,
For Blitz, that would work really well because she's always like roguing bad and like being a front run hitter. Mm-hmm. But for someone who plays a rogue differently than in more traditional senses of runs and hides and comes back, they wouldn't be able to use it. Right. Because they're moving back and forth.
But at some point, you're fighting a guy. Eventually that's going to happen. And once you're fighting a guy, you can just be like, why do you need to go back into the shadows at that point? You're already fighting the guy. I guess, it would be
the guy's
mildly
staying
annoying.
there in front of you, though. Like they can move.
True.
So
or for multiple guys,
Unless you are a tank who multiclassed into rogue, you only have to drop. I mean, it's 3 levels, which is not insignificant.
That's an interesting option as well.
A lot of the options in this actually make it, like dipping into other classes like much more beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
And as a min-maxer, that is all very interesting to me.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here looking at this give yourself advantage feature and being like, is Braden going to take 3 levels of rogue?
God, everybody's going to be a fucking rogue on this podcast.
And it was already attractive just for the idea of getting the sneak attack damage.
Yeah.
And also, I can have advantage on attacks.
Yeah.
Just for staying still. As a tank, I'm like, that was pretty nice.
Yeah. Well, I can only imagine Braden trying to sneak and just being like, I am about to strike to himself. Looking through the shadows. But I think like Tavernier, for example, I think I've been hit 5 times in Jenel's game. And that's all been mostly from splash damage from like fireballs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I do not know how it would play to not move at all with advantage,
Oh, let me explain. As a rogue, not moving at all, you die very quickly.
I imagine, yes.
Died 3 times. Battle before.
It would be. I bet it would be very good paired with invisibility, also.
Yes, that's true.
So we'll see what kind of.
It occurs to me. I'm comparing it in my head. So I have played a barbarian, as you know.
Yes.
And it occurs to me that actually my barbarian gets the ability to give himself advantage at 3rd level also already.
Mm-hmm.
But it has some drawbacks that the rogue doesn't have. Because it's frenzy. Barbarians get frenzy at 3rd level. And they have to be enraged to do it. And it imposes disadvantage on them.
Yes.
Or on
attacks against them.
Attacks against them get advantage.
Also get advantage.
Does that come with exhaustion afterwards?
And it gives you exhaustion. Now the exhaustion wouldn't really make sense thematically for the rogue, but disadvantage kind of would. Like if you're specifically like making yourself stay in a particular place. Yeah.
Well, we did just have a long discussion about the literal disadvantages of doing it as a rogue. So
of having to be stuck in one place. Yeah, that's true.
So maybe that's
very interesting.
Yeah.
So something I really want to talk about. And I don't know how you guys feel about it. But generally speaking, in D&D, when you go to make a character in D&D, you're thinking about all the different things that make them like a unique character, but you're also thinking about the damage output of that character, right? Like that's a very important part to when you're building a character. And Tasha's introduces a couple classes that are pacifist classes.
Yes.
And I want to talk about, is this something, one, people want to play? And is did they make these classes in a way that it's a viable option to be a pacifist character? They didn't just give you one, they gave you three.
So what are they?
Pacifist characters or classes. There is the Peace Domain Cleric. There is the Way of Mercy Monk.
Okay.
And there is the Order of Eloquence Bard, which I would love to get into because it is essentially it's a good dip for any charisma based character in this game at all. Like it just made Bard like the number one thing people are gonna like dip into for a bit for stuff, because the Order of Eloquence Bard at, I believe it's level 3. Let me double check. At level 3, you essentially get reliable talent for any charisma check.
Which is great.
Which is nuts. So the lowest you can roll is a 10.
Right.
On any
Which is great.
charisma. Yeah, so it specifically says you're a master. It's called Silver Tongue. You're a master at saying the right thing at the right time. When you make a charisma persuasion or charisma deception check, you can treat a d20 roll of 9 or lower as a 10.
You know what? That's
Which is
awesome for
nuts.
any face. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it is.
And I had, when I first built Tavernier, I was really trying to avoid combat and focus on those conversational things, because that's usually how I play RPGs. But then I got a little taste of the bloodlust, and now I love combat. But I think like a lot of new players who are sort of approaching from that mindset of, let me Dragon Age this a little bit, I think that's going to be very appealing to a lot of people. Yeah.
Well, and it kind of makes it like it makes sense. It's basically the equivalent of, in the real world, getting some public speaking training.
Sure. Yeah.
It's exactly what it is.
You've literally been taught how to talk, and you had to invest three levels to get there. And like that seems pretty fair to me. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also very useful for building NPCs. Like Braden's lawyers are both College of Eloquence bards from the Unearthed Arcana, but they didn't have this feature yet back then. They just had a lot of charisma proficiencies or whatever. The Peace Monk, is that what it was? Or what is the cleric? Peace Cleric?
Is the monk.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually played one of those when it was in Unearthed Arcana, and I actually really liked it.
Oh, was that your pacifist turtle?
I did. I had a pacifist turtle. He was like a ninja turtle who had sworn off combat.
Yeah.
And it was, and I thought that it was.
Wait,
a
was
lot
that
of
the
fun.
Way of Mercy Monk, or that was the Peace?
Yeah, I thought it was called something else when it was in Unearthed Arcana.
It might have been. I just thought that was a roleplay thing. I didn't realize that was a class. That's cool.
Yeah, no, I got it out of Unearthed Arcana, and I had a lot of fun. I think I only played with him once or twice, but he made a big impact, mostly because I had never played a character like that. And that was the main thing, is that I wanted to stretch and see what was possible in an RPG. And it made for a lot of fun situations. I mean, some people probably don't like conflict at the table, but I do. Like in between player characters, role playing out those kind of conflicts is fun. And having a pacifist character, you're immediately gonna butt heads with a lot of people who are playing D&D because you're trying to find a non-violent solution. Or in the case of my monk, it frequently ended up being looking for the least violent solution. So some violence may be involved, but like as little as possible.
Right.
So yeah, I'm interested to take a look and see how it's changed after the Unearthed Arcana.
Well, I think you playing that so smoothly that I didn't even realize it was a class or whatever, or a mechanic. I think sort of, do we have anything else we want to talk about in the character options section, or can we move on to group patrons?
We can move on.
Well, one small thing that I noticed
Yes.
in my very cursory glance is you can now change your subclass.
Yes,
That's all. I just wanted to point that out. And
Very
that's always
cool.
been something where I'm like, it sucks that I'm like, any DM is probably going to be like, yeah, sure, man, you can re-roll it or whatever. It was just nice to have it mechanically in here where it's like, yeah, no, you can totally do that. Maybe you have to like spend some time studying that new technique or whatever.
Yeah.
I will say it makes a lot more sense for some classes than others. Like, specifically ones that have patrons or are studying certain types of magic. Like, that makes sense. I feel like it doesn't necessarily make sense for like a rogue. To go from like, oh, my background's a thief, but no, now I'm an assassin. Now my background's I'm an assassin. Like,
yeah,
that doesn't make sense that you lose all your thieving abilities.
You say that, but hearing you say it out loud, I'm like, I can see how a thief could go from being a thief to being an assassin. You just have to start killing people.
Your abilities from before. It's not like it just goes from that point on.
Well,
that would make more sense.
Well, and that's what and as a min-maxer, that's what I want.
Yeah.
And I can see, and as a min-maxer, I can see why they don't allow it. Because if you could combine whatever different perks you wanted from the different subclasses, you could build something that's much more powerful than they intended. I think.
Well, and I think it's also useful as well as we do get new subclasses that come out that kind of make more sense for whatever characters that we're playing as. You know, like I was trying to figure out again how to add mechanics for the tadpole in my brain and my warrior's brain, and now I can switch over to this psychic subclass now that it exists. And that's also one of the things that I think like World of Warcraft I think had a big sunk cost fallacy in that you would level up so hard in a direction that might be changed completely in an update, and now you can in any like resting city you can change all your specs. You know, and it might not make sense narratively, but I think it does keep you coming back to the game in a meta way.
Well, it's one thing to go from being a thief to being an assassin. It's another thing to go from being a thief to being a phantom blade.
You stole Phantom Blade. And now it's all you're interested in.
Now you have psychic powers.
Yeah.
Now you are a ghost walker.
Yeah. Yeah. Although the Phantom Blade,
I'm gonna make one of those right away. By the way, I'm gonna make a Phantom guy.
I'm a Phantom in Sarah's game coming up.
Oh damn it!
Yeah, it's also great because you basically turn your kills into little Horcruxes that you can then. Yeah, and then you can like collect them and spend them for skill saves and stuff, but you could also spend them to ask them a single question, ask their ghost a single question.
Mike, build one for I'm running a Feywild campaign in January.
Ooh, okay.
Oh yeah, that'd be great for that.
Yeah. Do it for that. That'll be a lot of fun.
All right, sweet.
So now segue list. Let's move on to chapter 2, which is the group patron mechanic.
Yes.
Which, boy howdy, do I wish I had when we started Abandoned Quest. Because it's been real difficult to get you guys working for anybody. And
well, because we're all bosses.
It's not your fault.
Yeah.
It's not your fault. It's on me. But I'm glad Wizards has given me a mechanic to make that easier. And it's not just like group patrons, like you're a warlock and you all worship the same deity. You all attend a magic academy and you have a set list of missions, and there's tables for missions and the kind of characters that would be involved and that sort of thing. There's academy, ancient being, aristocrat, criminal syndicate.
Work very well.
Yeah, worked very well. Yes. Criminal syndicate, guild, military force, religious order, sovereign, and being your own patron.
Which is essentially what we would be in Abandoned Quest. I feel like would be your own patron kind of situation.
You'll see. But
sure.
But I do think this is an extremely useful tool to build campaigns around. And another step in the direction of that we were talking a little bit more about before we started recording, but they are introducing, with 5th edition, it seems to be very roleplay based, but in a looser way that I think a lot of people pick up D&D and immediately get into homebrew settings and drop to Rill and Faerun and the canon of D&D that that once you get really into it, you're very addicted to it. And sort of like the Matt Mercer Exandria origin system that lets you build a character that exists in the world. I think these group patron things really let you kind of dive in and get into the canon of it a little bit more.
Are there mechanical benefits for the patrons that are listed, or is it more of a flavor type thing?
There are
There
a
are
lot
perks.
of a lot of them are similar to like the theoretical perks you get with your background that no one ever really takes advantage of. You know, like how you can always find a place to sleep, or
for aristocrat it specifically says like you have expenses. You have like your patron reimburses you for like large sums.
It looked like some, just glancing at it, it looked like some were a little more fleshed out than others. But it's a cool idea for sure. I love it.
It's more of a role play guide, I think. It's more for DM building.
What
were you saying, Jenel?
I was saying, I don't remember if we touched on this with Mike or not, but that it seems like a lot of stuff in Tasha's is made for people who aren't necessarily able to just like pop a complete like fleshed out world out of their head like creatively. So it's just making it much more accessible for everybody to make these unique and diverse worlds for their games.
Yeah, they're kind of world building prompts.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I do like those kind of prompts, and like they have always had those for characters, right? Where your character has his flaws and his connections or whatever, and that's pretty cool. I would love to see a supplement that goes even further with this idea of the group patrons. A long time ago, I played a single game of a Game of Thrones RPG. That was a Game of Thrones pen and paper. I wish I could remember the actual name of the system. But it made a big impact on me because I think about that thing all the time. Because one of the coolest things is that in addition to rolling your character, you also rolled your house.
Okay, that's cool.
And then so like not only does that determine a lot of like where you stand in the world, like in like social class type of thing, but it also helps you have built-in goals because it has mechanical ways that you can advance your house and like what happens when you get more power or prestige or whatever.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it would be cool to see this idea even more fleshed out, where it would be like, okay, if you guys complete this quest for your guild, you'll get this tangible benefit added onto your guild or patron or whatever. Like it'll expand the abilities in this direction so that you have something tangible to work toward.
I think that would also be interesting in like a branching series of tables where like if you rolled this thing, here are these two tables that exist as like allies or enemies or particular allies, and like you could continue to roll up their relationships as repercussions to your moves. And things like that. Because that is really more how it works in Game of Thrones, now that you mention it. It's not like so emotional.
Boons and banes related to your advancing power in the world or whatever. Yeah, that'd be cool.
And it sort of spares the DM from having to keep track of that sort of thing. You know? Which is very
make annoying. It all up yourself. Yeah. It's just tools in your toolbox at that point. Yeah, it's cool.
Cool chapter. Not a lot to talk about. Anyone else got anything to go with the group group patrons?
No, I'm like kind of itching to get to chapter 3.
All right, chapter 3. We have, what is it? Spells and junk.
What?
I guess I was
magical miscellany.
Magic tattoos.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about it. So chapter 3 is magical miscellany. It's got spells and magic items, or is that chapter 4?
No, that's all in chapter 3.
Yeah.
Magic
3.
items, spells, etc., personalized spells, whatnot, and tattoos. Finally,
so there, I have a lot of feelings about
the
tattoos section, and while I am very happy that we have magical tattoos.
Yeah.
It is complete and utter bullshit that the way a lot of them are applied are you put the needle against your skin and then it's like a magic spell and it turns into like a tattoo and not, it's an actual tattoo.
Yeah.
It's fucking stupid and I don't know why they did it that way.
I have some things to say about that, I think. But
Sure.
there's a coverage system. So like the more common a tattoo is, the less space it takes up on your body. And like legendary tattoos are like entire torso pieces and things like that. You can unattune them. And so remove them. So I think they could have cleared this up by adding a mechanic where it is just permanent ink to it, like would be more intuitive, like we're thinking, Jenel. I think the reason that they did it so it was a needle that turns into the tattoo is, again, it's sort of like switching subclasses, you know? They want you to be able to unattune to the tattoo or swap them out.
See?
And I also think it is. I'm not defending them. I just think this is what their thinking is. And also, it's sort of the only way it's to make tattoos loot. It's like it's sloppy, but it's cleaner mechanically. Because otherwise, you kind of have to build tattoo shops and NPCs and all kinds of stuff.
But see,
that's kind of rare. Yeah, I get that for sure. But it is.
But we already
really
have
specific,
Donny,
you know?
We already have magic items. We already have all these other things that satiate that. There are a lot of items in Dungeons and Dragons. There are a lot of weapons you can attune to and items you can attune to
That's
and
true.
not attune to.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think we need necessarily like a shit ton more of that. But if you're going to introduce magical tattoos, make them fucking tattoos. Yes, you can't just get rid of a tattoo. That's part of getting a tattoo. You have to think about it before you fucking get it.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you guys have talked about this a little bit.
But
for me, non-tattoo having guy,
sure.
Let's back up a little bit and tell me. So you'd said that these tattoos, the problem is you get a needle and then you get a tattoo. But that sounds a lot like how tattoos work in real life.
So tell us how does it work in the game? You find a tattoo needle. What happens?
Yeah, you find a tattoo needle. You put like the flat needle against your skin, not making a tattoo. Like you take the needle. Sorry.
Well, let
me demonstrate. This is a brush. You take the brush, you put it against your skin, you say a couple words, the needle melts into a liquid and becomes the tattoo on your skin.
That's not true. That's not true. You do draw the tattoo on your skin first. You like trace it out on the skin, and then you do that same dumb thing you said. But you do go through the motions of tracing the tattoo on there. Whether or not that makes sense or that you like it, you know. But as an example,
and the idea is that you could just throw this on in the middle of a dungeon.
Yeah,
or
you have to attune to it.
You have to take a short rest or a long rest or whatever to attune to it.
Yeah,
okay.
And it is an
attune. But you can also unattune to it.
Yeah,
right, and you can unattune to it.
I guess I kind of figured this was the kind of thing where like you would have to like sit in a shop somewhere and get one, or like find the design in a dungeon and then take the design to a shop or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that there are. Well, I guess I don't know that this is true. Every Dungeons and Dragons game that I've ever played involves like interacting with people and like having like a social element to it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The way that the Dungeons and Dragons books are written kind of implies to me that there are some people who play a version of this game where you and a band of adventurers go from dungeon to dungeon, slaying perhaps dragons.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe,
sure, yeah,
and that
as opposed to wealthy people you don't like, literal dragons.
Well, and like I guess I guess there are some people who play a version of this game that's much more about the dungeon delving and less about being in a fantasy world and interacting with people from a fantasy world. Like maybe there's a guy who sends you to a dungeon. But that's the beginning and ending of his role in your life.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think also, like, again, I this could so easily be solved by just introducing a mechanic where you could just do it in the normal traditional way. But I think, like, there is a limit to how much sense it makes for a random 20-something Manhattan goth to be able to tattoo you with insane tentacles that come out of your hand to choke people, you know? So I think, like, introducing physical item tattoos does allow you to get more legendary effects in a way that makes sense, you know?
Now, are these permanent?
Like, no, you can unattune to them. No, you can unattune to them.
That's also a problem I have with it, but it's fine.
And the needle comes out of you again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
This is very different from the tattoo mechanics that I had imagined.
I'm on the record saying that sure, maybe it helps in some areas. I just hate it. It's fine.
Yeah. It's very clumsy. It's clean though, I think.
Sure.
You know? But here's an example of one of the tattoos. Here's a common tattoo, the Illuminator's tattoo. Which, while this tattoo is on your skin, you can write with your fingertip as if it were an ink pen that never runs out of ink. As an action, you can touch up a piece of writing to up to 1 page in length and speak a creature's name. The writing becomes invisible to everyone other than you and that named creature for 24 hours.
Cool.
And that's a cool little thing that you can do. There's also, like, the Ghost Step tattoo, which has 3 charges, regain at dawn. As a bonus action, you can expend 1 charge to gain resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, or not being able to be grappled, or to move through solid objects. You know, so there's sort of an escalating background effect that a lot of these tattoos have. I do remember there is a legendary one that gives you, like, big psychic claws or something.
There's a legendary one that is crazy. Is that the Blood Frenzy one?
I think so, yeah.
It's nuts. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah, the tattoos are complicated. You want to talk about those teeth?
Yeah,
because the teeth seem crazy to me. They seem.
Tell me about these teeth.
I feel like
I have a character who bites a lot.
Yeah,
it's very important before we get into this that I explain that. Unbeknownst to everybody watching this, I had a character named Jinx in a previous game that one of the 2 important things about her are that she found a deck of many things that she used that was very fun mechanically for me. And also she was this little weird creature that used to collect the teeth of everything that she killed. Those are her 2 main attributes. And afterwards I took that character, and in every single game that I DM, she has a shop that's called Jinx's Teeth Emporium, where she sells these crafted items made out of the teeth that she's taken from the shit that she's killed. Okay, put that aside.
And if you want, in order to help you purchase these items, you can give up your own teeth. I think is an important part of the story.
That's also true. I've made a whole mechanic for it. This is an item that they introduced in Tasha's that makes me feel like they have, like, a camera in my brain or something. It's called the Teeth of Dalvernar. I don't know. Donnie, you say it better.
Dalvernar.
There we go. And it is the teeth of this creature are stories given form. They are a collection of teeth from different origins. God. So they're all from different things. Made from various materials. The collection rests within a leather pouch.
It's a 2-page spread.
Yeah, fuck it is.
Sorry to interrupt. These teeth are two whole pages devoted to these teeth.
You're right. Let me summarize it. They took a deck of many things and they made it into a pouch of fucking teeth.
Here's the thing that I want to say. I just want to interject here. Like, the deck of many things, first of all, is much bigger. So you have a much rarer chance of getting something as insane as any one of these teeth's effects. Because these teeth do things like summon ancient dragons and liches and beholders, or 10 goblins and a goblin boss, and they all do that. They all are super crazy.
It's so good.
And that's not even their entire effect. So, like, is it that you find this tooth and have to beat this thing to get the tooth? Or like, are you just going to be summoning ancient dragons and mind flayers all over the place? This doesn't make sense to me.
Oh, I love it. I love
Right,
it so
I know
much.
you love it, but does it make sense?
So much. I mean,
wait! It looks like you're not necessarily summoning the Tarask, although
you're
one
not
of the
summoning
things
it.
that you could do is that's one of the teeth is
Yeah.
no, it says creatures summoned.
Yeah, that's like, what is? I didn't read this yet, but
Oh, you gotta plant the tooth in the ground like a little seed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then that thing happens, and then whoop, there's a beholder.
So is
You
this
made a beholder
either
happen.
or
I mean,
thing?
there's different wait, like we could spend all day doing this, but there's different things you can do with the teeth to have different effects.
Or you could put it in your own mouth, and
Which
make
is
it
a
one of your
mechanic
teeth.
that I had in my game.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah,
had
they totally.
to.
They totally jacked this from you. No question.
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
I was like having like an outer body experience when I was reading this.
So you bury the seed and water it, the tooth, and then the creatures that you summon are allies to you, speak all the languages you speak, and linger for 10 minutes before disappearing.
Right, and that's if you choose to do the sowing. If you choose to do the implanting, you get the implanted effect. So you can use the teeth to do two different things.
Okay.
It's not like So you can either summon those creatures, or you can put the tooth in your mouth and get the effects of the implanted.
Well, and if I were to get a genie tooth and put a genie tooth in my mouth, then I could use it to cast counterspell at 9th level.
So it's not that you have to get these teeth; they're all already in the bag.
So, and you're picking them out like Bernie Bot's magic.
You're
jelly
picking
beans?
them out like you pick a card from the deck of many things.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's not that you don't have to do the work. It's somebody found it. Somebody found a bag of Jinx's teeth. And it's using them.
So what are the disadvantages to these teeth? Because it seems like you could just sit there and roll them all up and get a bunch of great teeth and then just use them.
I don't know that there's necessarily a bad side to it.
That's crazy.
Oh wait, no. It says if you don't sow or implant the tooth. Okay, sorry. Okay, let me just read over the using the teeth. While you are holding the pouch. I think it's so, by the way. Oh, so sorry. While you're holding the pouch, you can use an action to draw one tooth. On the table, you determine which tooth you draw. And you can either sew the tooth or you can implant it. If you don't do either of those things, so you don't necessarily have to do either of those things, because that would take like a while. Like it's not like something you could just do, I don't believe, in the middle of like a battle.
Sure.
So you can choose to take a tooth without doing one of those actions, and when you do that, the creature that comes out of it is hostile to you and your allies.
Okay.
I see. Okay.
So that would be like, so if you're
sew
using it in a battle, like to sew the tooth, you place it in the ground, occupied space, throw it. You have to have water nearby.
You also can't do it in a tight spot, which is good because it could summon the Tarask.
Yeah.
So there are like specific things you have to like meet to do either the sow the teeth or implant the teeth. So if you're in a tight spot and you can't do one of those, you still can use it, but they will be hostile to you.
Okay.
So like, say you're like,
which might be fine.
Yeah, like if you're in a battle with something that's way above your pay grade and you guys are having like a hard time like trying to get out of there, you could grab a tooth, fucking throw it, and boogie.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Well, and you can implant teeth of equal to 1 plus your Constitution modifier, minimum of 2 teeth.
Well, and I think what was throwing me is that this is the kind of item you usually see at the end of a campaign, you know?
It is a wondrous item. Like, it's supposed to be as rare as a deck of many things. Like, you are not supposed to just give level 1 characters this fucking bag.
Yeah.
Am I going to? Probably.
Sure, yeah.
The teeth of Dal Havern are coming to a teeth emporium near you.
Yes. And again, we already talked about the sorcerer stuff that they've added. The essence shards and the vials of blood, I think, are very cool. A lot of wizard spell books I have not gone into yet because they're all very big and complicated.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a peek at that forever in a sec.
Yeah, you'll want to check those out, Michael.
Yeah,
I sure will.
Or don't, so it's a surprise.
Sure. I know one is the Demonomicon that we've been waiting for stats for a very long time.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess that we can get into chapter 4, which is called...
I have not actually looked in chapter 4 yet, which is crazy because that's probably the one that I should be looking in the most.
Dungeon Master's tools. Yeah. So, well, first of all, they for once advise you to do a session 0 here and give you tips on how to do that. But you also have sidekicks, which is an interesting new mechanic. Yes. Yeah. Especially because sidekicks are basically NPCs that you upgrade. You give them a whole lot of like player character style upgrades.
I super wish I had this before I made Paradonna, but it's fine.
I also wish I had this before a lot of stuff. But one thing they also advise is if you have like a guest, like a partner who just wants to get in on the action for a couple hours, you can have them control a sidekick, which is less complicated than a player character. Although the line is very blurry, I think, between sidekicks and player characters.
As it should be, because they're like fleshed out characters.
In Unearthed Arcana, there were rules for making a player character out of like an animal. Mm-hmm. For instance, I played a D&D game with my brother who has a very young daughter. Mm-hmm. And so he made her a fox to control. Which was very simple mechanically, so she could basically say, "I want to swim in the lake," and he'd be like, "All right, cool, you're doing that, great."
Yeah, this thing did immediately remind me of Jenel. You were talking about playing a character who was a mother and their kid, and playing both of them. I think the sidekick would be a very good way to do that.
Yeah,
cool.
I did want to do that.
Beyond sidekicks, we also have environmental hazards, which are so fun, as well as parlaying with monsters. Can we talk about this for a second? There's tables too. Let's say you are meeting with a dragon and you want to parlay with them, and instead of having to pull something entirely out of nothing, they have like a table here where it's like a dragon would desire 1, gold or gems. 2, anything from a draconic rival's horde. 3, an antique passed down at least generations. Or 4, a flattering artistic depiction of the dragon.
I also do love that there is a part that is like monster research, kind of very Witcher-esque.
Yes, very Witcher-esque.
Table that is kind of, I feel like before now in game, if you were going to try and parlay with a monster without these mechanics, you were using persuasion or maybe animal handling. Yeah. And in this, it's like, no, you can use, like for an aberration, you can use Arcana to figure out if you would know what they would want.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
Like for dragons, you can use Arcana, History, or Nature.
But not animal handling.
This
came up in a game last night.
Yes. Yes. Dragons are people. Well, and I think it also is good to add a little bit more prep. I think it's cool role-playing investment, especially if you are going on like a Slay the Beast kind of thing. I do wonder if this mechanic was introduced entirely to stop bards fucking.
Maybe.
It's like D4 fucking is not on the dragon's table, unfortunately.
that is your dick is not a desired offer. That's good. I see also this does give a tiny amount of utility to the survival skill.
Yes.
Which is a skill that is somewhat undervalued.
It is, yeah.
And it's looking at this table, it still seems a little undervalued, if I'm being honest. It's never the primary thing that you use to figure anything out, but it's there as an option.
Yeah. Survival seems much more of a hard mode stat.
Yeah.
than
Like
anything else.
if you have adventurers trying to survive in a magic forest or something.
Right.
There are a lot of campaigns that honestly just never even use it. I feel like.
Yeah, I think so too.
It really depends on like the DM style. If you're one of those people who's like making your players roll to see if they catch food and shit. Like if you're not, then it's not going to come up. Like,
yeah. Traveling in the wilderness between cities or towns or whatever. Yeah.
Speaking of which, I want to get into a little bit the environmental hazard section.
Yeah.
Sure.
Where there are rules for like supernatural reasons, where like ghosts and stuff happen, but there's also rules for certain kinds of cities and stuff, which I think are very cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like there's the thing that immediately caught my eye was rules for an infested city.
Oh yeah.
Where if you look on page 156, there's a city that's entirely enveloped in spider webs.
Yeah.
Which is an awesome idea. And there's a D100 table for the different kinds of things that could go along with that. There's also haunting mechanics, which are great. And I wish I had that before you guys got into Troll Skull. As well as, here's an interesting thing, Far Realm stuff, which shows a bunch of Mind Flayer nautiloids on a distant eldritch city. Yeah. I really think we're in for a Spelljammers thing coming up soon.
Ooh, that would be awesome.
Because they keep dropping space stuff. But that's also where the Mirror Zone thing you were talking about came up.
For sure. Yeah, and I think that this stuff is awesome. I also, as I've recently gotten interested in home brewing magic items, and these kinds of tables are pretty clutch for that kind of thing. Because they give you like mechanical ideas that like are already basically pre-approved. Like if it's one of the effects that's on this table, you know that that's already like pretty much like you're good. But you can also have items that draw off of these tables. So like you can have a haunted item that rolls on the haunted table.
Oh, I do love that.
That's cool.
That would be such a cool thing to have.
And so seeing these kind of tables kind of open up some of those options and some of those ideas for people like me.
I'm completely stealing that idea.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Well,
I'm running a game tonight where one of the characters has a haunted doll. So
perfect.
I'm completely stealing. Thank you for giving me that idea.
Yeah.
That.
It's why I'm glad that they had this stuff in here. So that's cool. I don't know if we have anything else to say about that. I do have some thoughts about these puzzles.
Okay, do you want us reading the puzzles? Because I'm partially like kind of worried that like, oh, if we read the puzzles and Donny wants to use them in abandon quests, like we're already gonna know what to do.
Here's the thing: I'm very careful about what kind of puzzles I present to you guys, and I might use versions of these puzzles, not literally puzzles. I will say, we recently did a sort of temple dungeon where there were a lot of puzzles. And there are rules and stuff for puzzles and like ideas for what kinds of puzzles might exist. There were very few puzzles to actually find. I had to really dive on the internet much more than I was expecting to find literal puzzles for you guys to do. They were not presented in the DM's guide or whatever. So I think them actually providing some fucking puzzles is a great move.
I mean, to do puzzles, the one game that I played last year on my birthday with you guys, I had to make up all those puzzles. Like, I could not find puzzles anywhere.
It was crazy.
Internet. And then this year, I just plucked it from Tomb of Annihilation because they have some puzzles in there. But yeah, there is like for a game that is all about dungeons, there is a surprising lack.
Yeah, well, that is really interesting. It does feel literally tacked on because it's like 7 pages at the very back of the book.
Yeah,
I do love that they're thinking about it though. It is really cool, and it's a weird throwback because you mentioned Tomb of Annihilation and how you had to go back and take puzzles out of Tomb of Annihilation. Yeah. And that's because Tomb of Annihilation is actually an older dungeon. It's like super old.
Yeah. It was remade for 5th edition, right?
And they just keep remaking it because it's a classic and because it has all these classic puzzles in it.
Yeah.
And they're not really doing that anymore, but I hope that this is the start of them working towards that.
Yeah, I would be down for an entire book of puzzles. You know,
me too.
See, now I think that's gonna happen because in the forums that I've been on recently, a lot of people are kind of complaining. Oh. Yeah, one that used to do it. But also, like, I know a couple of the complaints that have come with Tasha's are sort of like what I was just asking you a second ago. Like, it's a book that DMs and players can buy. Mm-hmm. And if you have puzzles in a book that your players buy, they're going to know the fucking answers to the puzzles.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. I feel like just like with the magic items and just like with the tables and everything else, this is all a starting point, right?
Yeah.
Like, and these puzzles are real cool. And if you're in a pinch, you could just totally lift one. And if somebody knows it, they might just have to role play like they don't know it. You know what I mean? Like, you're a role player. You got to play the role sometimes.
Yeah.
And modify what your character knows versus what you personally know and try to find the fun there.
It's a hard thing to do, though, sometimes.
Try to nerf yourself with some intelligent checks, maybe, you know?
Yeah. Well, and one thing that I particularly like about this is I really enjoy them thinking about the hints that you would give. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, all right, your players aren't going to get this. They're going to need hints. And they can roll for those hints using their character's abilities, which is important. It's a cool thing to have built in. To know what, as a DM, what would be fun for me to divulge about this puzzle in order to help them along, that their characters might figure out. I like that.
I like that too. And this does seem to be, like, I think them reprinting so many spells and subclasses from other disparate materials, and a thing that we haven't really seen the likes of in a while. I guess, like, Mordenkainen's and Xanathars are sort of, not even them, but you know what I mean? Like, these sort of, like, supplementary rule books that aren't tied to campaigns. I really, like, people have not been this excited for a D&D book in a really long time. And I think, like, this is because it's such a universal tool. And so a book of puzzles and things like that, I hope they do more things like this.
Me too. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I hope we see the return of like a dungeon delve.
Yeah.
Where it's like D&D 5e approved dungeon. I mean, there's a ton of great homebrew stuff out there that I've been finding. As I've recently become interested in doing homebrew stuff. So I'm seeing a lot of great content that's out there. There's like a really rich, like, DM's Guild and Drive Through RPG, and there's like all these marketplaces where you can go out and get affordable, fun puzzles and stuff like that. There's tons of people giving them away for free just because they enjoyed thinking of them. Because we're all DMs and we're all thinking about what a cool adventure would be, and then sharing that with people after we've cooked it up for ourselves. But it's nice to have like the approved stuff, just to build off of and be like, okay, I know that these mechanics mostly work the way that they are, and then I can flavor them the way that I want for my campaign. So I would like to see more of that in the future, and I hope that this is an indication that we might.
Yeah, I also hope that we get more stuff like that. I will say the last bummer thing I'm going to say. What I think the most disappointing thing for me in this book was that the puzzle called All That Glitters has nothing to do with gold.
Sure.
Nothing to do with gold in it. I'm so upset about it.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm done.
Certainly a personal malady, but I understand. Yes, I understand that quite a bit.
So you're saying that All That Glitters is not gold?
No. Not in this book, not in Tasha's.
I would, if we're talking about things we'd like to see next, which I think is interesting, I would like to see camp regional guides make a comeback. I think they did one with the Sword Coast Adventurers guide, and it was not very well received because I think it was all regional guide, but like I downloaded a Moonshay regional guide off the DM's Guild, and it has been extremely helpful to me. Okay. And like, we are running Waterdeep Dragon Heist technically, but it's really more a guide to Waterdeep for me. So I would like to see that kind of thing make a comeback as well.
Well, and there's a lot of we got the Eberron book, and Eberron, of course, one of the most popular settings. It's super cool. The stuff that's in there. Actually, the guy that made it lives like real close to me. We met at a bar one time.
Oh, is he the guy you did the test with?
Yeah. We did a test for the Adventure Zone card game, which he was also involved in writing.
Dope.
But there's a lot of other cool settings. You mentioned spell jamming, like Spelljammer stuff, and I hope we get a book on that. Yeah. I'm also a big fan of Dark Sun, which we haven't really heard much about. It's a desert setting that's really, really cool. The two, I've never played there or anything. I just know about it, like, conceptually, and there's some really cool stuff. One, it has the bug people in it, which
sick.
we haven't heard anything about them. We don't see them anywhere. As far as I know, they're not in the Unearthed Arcana at all. And there's also like there's different kinds of magic that you find there, and like some of the flavor stuff is really cool. Like they have mastered the art of storing information in knots.
Sick. Awesome.
So instead of spell scrolls, you might find pieces of string with knots in just the right way.
All right, well, I just want to establish right now, Michael, I've told you I wanted to use that in the magic system for that book I'm writing, so I just want to I did not steal that from here. I just want to put that on the record. Okay, cool.
100%.
Yeah. Hey, cameo.
Hey, Max.
We have a guest.
Hey, Max, what up?
His nap early.
Welcome.
Yay.
Hi, buddy. Hi.
So, I guess, let's wrap it up. Oh, last thing I just want to say about stuff I would like them to do, in the future of book releasing is, I think sailing mechanics suck. And and they need to figure that out because it doesn't make sense. It's not how sailing is in real life, and you kind of have like one maestro making all the decisions and stuff, and that's some junk, you know.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder about like vehicles in general, like not just sailing, but I feel like there could be more integrated vehicles in general. Just like it is weird when you're on like spells target creatures. They almost always target creatures. And there are some spells that would make a lot of sense to cast on a vehicle, like haste or slow. And like I don't think that
I mean, I've been letting you guys do that, but you're technically not supposed to.
Right. And you think any DM would probably be like, yeah, of course you can cast slow on a vehicle you want to be slower. Why wouldn't you be able to?
And what are land vehicles, really? Like carts? Is because we've had land vehicle proficiency since the player's handbook, and I guess it's just carts. Like, what are we talking about here with land vehicles?
They really redid a lot of those things for Avernus. Like, there's a pretty extensive thing,
right? But imagine an infernal war machine like fucking booking out a Phandalin. You know, like, I don't think that's gonna happen very much.
True. But like, if your guy has land vehicle proficiency, does that mean he's proficient in trains?
Sure.
I don't know. I would like if there were some more like maybe a train heist or a wagon heist or some kind of mechanics for that thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and just like a straight up set of rules that's like, here's how spells and other mechanics interact with vehicles. Just dead stop all vehicles, like something super general for that.
Yeah.
So that we're not all just homebrewing like, oh yeah, I guess that works, you know.
There is a weird dissonance with vehicles specifically, that we have all this crazy magic and we have wheels. And horses. Like, there's no reason we can't have some kind of car or something, you know, in this. Like, at this point, it's not medieval. It's just you don't see cars in fantasy very often. But we need some sort of goblin expansion for this.
Yeah, for sure. Aww. Buddy.
But I just had you up here. You wanted to go down.
All right, well, let's let Jenel go. Let's wrap this up.
Well, I did want to say you mentioned that you want like better sailing mechanics.
Yeah.
They're not going to come out. They just printed Saltmarsh. They've just reprinted Saltmarsh.
The Saltmarsh, but they reprinted Saltmarsh. You know, it's kind of like
I think the sailing mechanics that are in it are all new. Like, I think they just came out with them.
Well, here's why I think they can still do it, is because there aren't any fucking nautical adventures in Saltmarsh.
Sure.
You're in the water for 20 minutes in Saltmarsh, you know? Like, it's all, you get to an island immediately, or you're in a sunken thing, but you're never really sailing. Like, I looked, because we're in an island adventure right now.
Yeah.
And so they could still, like, if God willing, one day they do a Moonshae Isles book, which they really should. It's super cool. I would love if they introduced some more intuitive natural sailing mechanics into that, you know.
Fair. If
failing that,
wrap it
I
up
can't.
With saying what we think that they should make a book about next.
What?
So should we wrap it up with saying what we think that they should make a book about next?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think they should make a book about next?
Sailing. Your turn.
Feywild. Why does the Feywild not have a freaking book?
Crazy.
It's nuts.
Can I get a full book that's just psionic stuff?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair.
Yeah, it's called Tasha's Cauldron of Everything.
I mean, kind of.
I do wonder what does a psychic space look like in D&D? Like, where are they hanging out?
Yeah, and what's the ethereal realm like? These might be related questions, but there are a lot of spells that are like, and items that are like, this goes to the ethereal plane, or if you put these two items together, it'll make a portal to the ethereal plane, and it's like, okay, but what's that like?
Yeah,
what's it like there?
Let's get Laeral Silverhand's Guide to Planeswalking.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, and that's what spell jamming would probably be about.
Yeah.
Would be like, here's some mechanics for the other planes.
Mm-hmm.
Slash like the Far Realm stuff that we saw in here. Get more specific, guys.
Yeah.
Would love to see that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, hey, where can people find you on the internet, Mike?
You can check me out at Mike Atonic. And here's Carlina.
Hey. At Mike and Tonic on the internet.
Yeah.
Good. Jenel, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Instagram at D&D Jellybean.
Great. And I'm at Jason Mimosa and on the internet as well. And thank you for joining us here as we discuss the new book. This was fun. We'll probably do more of these.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
This is cool.
We should go through some of the other material.
Yeah, we were talking about Icewind Dale. It seems like a very fun to go through.
Ooh, yeah.
There were a lot.
Let's do it again where you guys do all the homework and I just jump in at the last minute.
Sure. Yeah. Analyze fish style. That's good. All right. Well.
Don't give up.
Fun. Don't give up. Etc. Bye.
It's Carlina again. Bye. No. Okay, bye. I love you. Bye.